Every day, men wake up and rush into battles they don't understand. They argue, they chase, they defend, they move. And in all that movement, they lose. Because speed without strategy is suicide. Look around you. Everyone's running. Online, at work, even in their relationships. Everybody's reacting. Nobody's thinking. We live in a generation that confuses noise for intelligence, that worships fast talkers and impulsive decisions. But in the end, the loudest man always bleeds first. The world doesn't reward the first to strike. It rewards the one who strikes last and right. Picture this. Two men stand on an empty field. No audience, no cameras, just silence and steel. The first man lunges, quick, confident, violent. He's certain his speed will save him. The second man doesn't move. He watches. He studies. Breathing, footwork, fear. He doesn't fight emotions. He lets them reveal patterns. Then, one step, one cut, silence. That's Musashi, the undefeated samurai, the man who fought 60 duels and never lost once. Not because he was stronger, but because he understood one law of war. Intelligence is not speed, it's timing. Before you lift your weapon, lift your mind. Before you speak, study. Before you move, measure. And before you strike, wait. Most men lose not because they're weak, but because they can't sit still when chaos starts. They react too soon. They reveal too much. Their emotions outrun their logic. You don't outsmart the world by being clever. You outsmart it by being calm. Modern psychologists call it response inhibition, the discipline of waiting before reacting. It's the most advanced form of intelligence known to man, because the brain that waits wins. Waiting isn't weakness, it's data collection. When you pause, you learn. When you react, you gamble. That's why most men are predictable. They post what they feel. They argue when triggered. They expose their strategy before the war begins. But the disciplined man, he's invisible. His silence is a mirror. His patience is a weapon. He lets the world exhaust itself, trying to read him. The Japanese called it Heiho, the law of strategy. To Musashi, strategy wasn't technique. It wasn't swordplay. It was mental positioning, the ability to think clearly when chaos breaks. He said, the ultimate aim of strategy is to see things as they truly are. And that's the problem with most men. They don't see. They assume. They imagine. They project. They walk into every battle emotionally blind. Musashi never did. He understood that the world isn't moved by strength, it's moved by clarity. So he trained not his muscles, but his perception. Every duel, every opponent, every silence was data. He learned to predict rhythm, not attack it. He knew when a man's breath betrayed his nerves, when a shift in weight meant fear. He saw before others reacted. That's intelligence.
In your world,
the same rules apply. Your battlefield might be a meeting room, a negotiation, a conversation, a brand pitch, a relationship. You think you're losing because you're not loud enough. No, you're losing because you're not patient enough. The true strategist never reacts emotionally. He reframes the moment. He lets others play his game. People think they're competing with you, but you've already moved 3 steps ahead in silence. You observe, you wait, you strike. 1 move, not 10. Precision over performance. You've been taught that being smart means being fast, that talking first means confidence, that showing strength means power. Wrong. Outsmarting others isn't about speed. It's about silence. It's the art of not blinking first. The disciplined man is unreadable. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't seek applause. He's too busy studying everyone who does. When you see him quiet, don't mistake it for fear. He's calculating. He's watching every detail, every word, every slip. And when he moves, it's already over. You must rewire your instincts. You must unlearn the addiction to reaction. Train your nervous system to be still under pressure. That's the real battlefield, your mind under chaos. Every man can fight when he's comfortable, but only the disciplined man fights when he's calm. In a storm, don't be the thunder, be the silence before it. That's where intelligence lives. That's where dominance begins. Remember this: speed kills strategy. Noise kills awareness. Ego kills intelligence. The world doesn't need another loud man. It needs a man who can think under fire. A man who studies before he strikes. A man whose silence terrifies the room. That's how you outsmart everybody else, by mastering the mind before the blade. Because when the storm breaks, the calm man always wins. Most men think they lose because they're not strong enough. They don't realize they lose because they're impatient. They rush to prove something before they even understand what's at stake. They talk too early, post too quickly, act too soon, and then wonder why they bleed. In every field, from business to war, the same truth holds. Reaction is weakness disguised as confidence. The world doesn't reward the man who moves first. It rewards the man who waits until movement becomes inevitable. The mind before the blade is where victory is decided. Before you lift your weapon, before you speak, before you act, your mind has already chosen whether you'll win or lose. Intelligence isn't about speed, clever words, or the ability to multitask. It's about clarity under pressure. It's the calm that reads chaos like an open map. And that calm is a skill, not a personality trait. You train it the same way you train your body, through stillness, repetition, and control. Imagine 2 men facing each other on an open field. The air is thick. Nobody speaks. One of them grips his sword so tightly that his fingers tremble. His heartbeat is loud enough to betray him. He's strong, trained, confident, but desperate to move first. The other man stands still, his weapon loose in his hand, eyes steady. He doesn't need to prove anything. He's not trying to win. He's waiting to understand. The first man lunges, driven by adrenaline, the illusion of readiness. The second man sees the faint shift of weight, the telegraphed panic, the mistake hidden in speed. A single cut ends it. That's Musashi. That's strategy. Musashi fought 60 duels and never lost a single one. Not because he was the strongest, but because he mastered patience as a weapon. He understood what most people never do, that the greatest intelligence is restraint. He would arrive late to duels deliberately, forcing his opponents into irritation. He would watch them pace, curse, lose rhythm. And when they were exhausted from their own anticipation, he would strike. It was never about physical dominance. It was psychological warfare. Musashi knew that the man who controls timing controls everything. That is the first law of intelligence. Wait until your enemy reveals himself. Because everyone does, through anger, pride, overconfidence, or fear. People broadcast their weaknesses every time they can't sit with silence. Watch them long enough, and they'll hand you the map to their undoing. Modern psychology calls it response inhibition. Musashi called it seeing without distraction. You must become a master of restraint, the kind of restraint that unnerves others because it's so deliberate, the kind that makes people guess what you're thinking because you don't need to show it. This is not emotionlessness, it's control, and control terrifies people who have none. Every man wants to be seen as intelligent. Few have the discipline to earn it. Intelligence is not accumulation, it's elimination. You subtract noise, you subtract ego, you subtract haste, until what's left is pure intent. In Musashi's world, this philosophy had a name, Heiho, the law of strategy. It meant seeing through illusion, perceiving what others miss, and moving only when the outcome is certain. That's what separated Musashi from every other warrior, his ability to stay composed in disorder. He once fought a man named Sasaki Kojiro, known for his speed and a sword nearly as long as a spear. Kojiro was celebrated across Japan, fast, loud, flamboyant. Musashi arrived late to the duel, deliberately disheveled, carrying a wooden sword carved from an oar. Kojiro mocked him. Musashi smiled. Moments later, Kojiro was dead. A single strike. He had studied his opponent long before he arrived. He knew Kojiro's pride would blind him. He didn't fight Kojiro's blade. He fought his ego. That's strategy, and that's intelligence. To defeat a man long before you touch him. You want to outsmart people? Learn to delay reaction. You want to be respected? Learn to sit in silence without needing to prove your power. The disciplined man isn't reactive, he's predictive. He doesn't panic when others move. He studies rhythm. He observes timing. Because once you understand rhythm, you can dictate it. Most men drown in speed. They rush to act, to post, to explain,
to prove. And they call it ambition. But ambition without patience is chaos. It's why great ideas die early, because their owners can't wait for them to mature. They seek results before mastery, applause before perfection. That's not intelligence, that's desperation. Real intelligence is delayed gratification turned into art. It's knowing when not to act. It's the precision of saying no when yes feels good. It's the clarity to let 10 opportunities pass because you know the 11th will be yours. Musashi lived with this law even in solitude. He withdrew from society, not to escape, but to see clearer. He trained alone in caves, wrote the Book of 5 Rings in isolation, and lived by a single code, to see reality without distortion. That's why he was unbeatable, because while others trained their hands, he trained his perception. In the modern world, this is still the ultimate weapon. The world rewards men who can stay composed when everything burns. That's why the loud fail. They expose themselves too soon. The calm adapt. They bend reality around their silence. Understand this. Strategy begins with stillness. Before you plan, before you act, before you speak, you observe. You let patterns reveal themselves. You allow emotion to pass before it becomes decision. When you master that, you stop competing with people. You start conducting them. You become the calm man everyone underestimates until it's too late. And that's when you know you've truly outsmarted them. When they think you're slow, but you're just waiting for the perfect strike. Musashi said, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." That's the mind before the blade. It's not about brilliance, it's about balance. It's not about being fast, it's about being unshakable. Because when chaos arrives, and it always does, the calm man doesn't need to prepare. He is the preparation. Most men see, but very few observe. They think vision means understanding. It doesn't. They look at people and only catch what's loud, the words, the gestures, the performance. They miss the flicker, the hesitation, the involuntary silence, the tiny betrayals that reveal everything. That's why they lose. The smartest man in the room is never the one who speaks first. He's the one who collects data while everyone else leaks it. He watches tone, rhythm, and micro-expression, the blink before the lie, the smile before deceit. He's not paranoid, he's precise. While the rest of the world scrambles to respond, he waits for the truth to expose itself. That's the invisible game. And Musashi played it like no one else. He didn't rely on strength or technique alone. He studied presence. He trained his eyes to see what others missed, the slant of a shoulder, the shift of balance, the way a man's breath faltered when fear entered his lungs. He fought not bodies, but patterns. Every opponent thought they were fighting a man. They were actually fighting a mirror that reflected their own rhythm back at them. That's what it means to see that which cannot be seen.
In modern psychology, this level of perception has a name: meta-awareness.
It's the ability to step outside yourself while staying inside the moment, to watch your own reactions without obeying them. Most men never achieve it because they're too addicted to emotion. They defend, they argue, they explain. The strategist never does. He lets emotion move through him, but never move him. Musashi's calm wasn't emotionless, it was engineered. He used silence as a weapon. He would enter duels so composed that his stillness itself became an attack. His opponents felt unseen, unheard, and unnerved. That's how control works. When you are unreadable, the world becomes predictable. Because if they can't read you, they can't plan for you. That's the psychology of strategic dominance. Control perception, and you control the field. You can see this pattern everywhere. In negotiations, the loudest man is almost always losing leverage. In arguments, the one rushing to prove his point has already surrendered clarity. In leadership, the one who talks too much reveals insecurity. The silent man, he holds gravity. He studies timing, he studies tone, he studies spaces between words. And when he finally speaks, the room obeys. Musashi called this kan no mei, the eye of perception. He taught that a warrior must see not only the visible enemy, but the invisible rhythm of the fight. Every conversation, every competition, every relationship has a rhythm. Moments that rise, moments that collapse. Most people only see events. The strategist sees rhythm. He waits until energy peaks, then strikes where the rhythm breaks. That's not luck. That's trained intuition. Understand this. Intuition is not magic. It's the byproduct of thousands of hours of pattern recognition. Musashi spent years training his eyes and his instincts until he could predict movement without thinking. That's why modern soldiers, athletes, and entrepreneurs all use the same principle: pattern mastery. When you've studied rhythm long enough, you stop reacting to events and start anticipating them. That's what makes you untouchable. The invisible game is not about manipulation. It's about truth detection. When you know how to watch, deception dies on contact. People reveal themselves constantly, in contradiction, in excess, and how they fill silence. The disciplined man doesn't need to expose anyone, he just lets them speak long enough to expose themselves. That's how Musashi disarmed the world, through patience and awareness so exact it felt supernatural. Today, this awareness is rarer than ever, because the world trains men to react. Notifications, debates, outrage, everything demands instant emotion. If you can resist that pull, if you can keep your inner temperature low while everyone else overheats, you become impossible to manipulate. You see patterns faster, make decisions cleaner, and stay invisible while others broadcast chaos. And here's the paradox. The most aware man looks the most ordinary. He doesn't boast, he doesn't need to perform awareness, he simply is. He watches without staring, he listens without judgment. He's detached, but not distant, focused, but not rigid. That's power in its quietest form. So here's the command. Stop trying to be noticed, start trying to see. Silence is your data, observation is your arsenal. Every human interaction is a duel of awareness, and most people enter unarmed. When you walk into a room, you should already know the temperature. Who's restless, who's dominant, who's insecure, who's trying too hard. You should read the hierarchy before anyone introduces it, because once you can read rhythm, you can write outcome. That's how Musashi lived. He didn't win because he was smarter, he won because he saw sooner. He outthought the world because he out-observed it. He played a game nobody else knew was being played. You want to outsmart everyone else? Then start with the quietest discipline of all, awareness. Learn to study the invisible, because the man who sees what others miss doesn't need luck or force. He already knows what's coming. And when you know what's coming, you've already won. Most men enter battle blind, not because their eyes are closed, but because their minds are. They walk into life carrying a perfect plan, a clean map, and the arrogance to believe that reality will respect it. But the world doesn't bend for your expectations, it shatters them. The first truth you must accept is this: every plan is a guess, until it meets resistance. Strategy begins the moment things stop going according to plan. The average man panics when that happens. His script fails, his confidence cracks, and he blames the world for not matching his imagination. The strategist, however, watches the shift and adjusts mid-motion. He expects change. He thrives on it. Musashi understood this before any general wrote it in a book. He once said, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain." Most people quote that as wisdom, few live it. What he meant was simple but brutal. Stop worshiping your plan. The path is irrelevant, only the summit matters. Let me show you what that looked like. Musashi once arrived deliberately late to a duel. His opponent stood, waiting under the sun, anxious, sweating, angry. The crowd murmured. They thought Musashi was disrespectful, arrogant, but he was calculating. He knew anger consumes energy. He let his opponent burn out under his own expectations. When Musashi finally arrived, calm and composed, his presence alone shifted the air. He had already won. The blade was just a formality. That is what it means to read the terrain. The fool rushes to fight on time because the clock says so. The strategist arrives when the opponent's mind is already defeated. Musashi didn't fight men, he fought their emotions, and they never noticed.
In life, this translates to more than battle. You control your terrain when you refuse to be predictable. You become dangerous when people can't anticipate you. Change your pace, alter your tone, adjust your response time. Stop being available to every summons. Routine makes you readable. Predictability is a form of weakness. The moment others can map you, they can corner you. The first key is detachment from the map. Learning to abandon a plan the second it stops serving you. Most men cling to outdated versions of themselves because change terrifies them. They'd rather defend a dying strategy than admit they miscalculated. But the disciplined mind doesn't argue with reality, it negotiates with it. Every morning he reassesses his terrain. New obstacles, new weather, new rhythm, and he adjusts. He doesn't chase perfection, he chases precision. The second key is using unpredictability as armor. When you refuse to move in patterns, no one can anticipate your next step. In war, that's survival. In business, it's leverage. In relationships, it's control. People respect what they can't read. They trust what they can't predict, not because they understand it, but because it forces them to pay attention. The third key is embracing fluidity as intelligence. Rigidity is the death of strategy. You can't be too proud to pivot. The samurai who believed only one stance could win died by that stance. Likewise, the man who believes only one way leads to success will crumble the day life shifts its weight. You must think like water. Water never argues with the shape of the container, it adapts, yet it still destroys rock through persistence. Flexibility is not softness, it's dominance disguised as grace. When you walk through life with that mindset, you stop being reactive. You stop being trapped by emotion or pride. You begin to see patterns forming before others notice them. You know when a conversation is turning. You sense when an environment is shifting. You can feel when a plan has expired. That awareness, not luck, not charm, is what separates the strategist from the ordinary. So here's the order. Stop defending your map. Start reading your terrain. Your plan is not your identity. Your adaptability is. Outsmarting others isn't about being right all the time. It's about being the first to see when you're wrong and the fastest to evolve. The mind that adapts faster wins longer. The man who adapts faster rules quieter. That's the Musashi way. Most men only study movement, never stillness. But stillness is where real adaptation begins. When the world shifts, the undisciplined react. The strategist recalibrates. He doesn't panic when the storm changes direction. He adjusts his sails while others drown in surprise. You must understand something. Control doesn't come from power. It comes from awareness. The man who knows what's happening before anyone else does, even if he can't stop it, still holds the advantage. Because while others waste emotion resisting reality, he's already deciding how to use it. That's what Musashi meant when he fought according to terrain. He didn't fight to prove strength, he fought to prove presence. If the ground was muddy, he fought low. If it was narrow, he fought with precision. The man who refuses to adapt dies defending a fantasy. The man who bends without breaking owns the outcome. You can't outsmart life by memorizing its patterns. You outsmart it by sensing when the pattern is changing. That's sensitivity, the ability to notice when rhythm breaks. That's where intelligence lives. So if you want to win, stop asking, what's the best way? Start asking, what's the current way, and how long will it stay that way? Every environment has an expiration date. Every strategy has a shelf life. The men who survive are the ones who smell decay before the rot spreads. They don't wait for proof. They move at the first tremor of change. Remember this, rigidity is not strength, it's fear pretending to be discipline. And Musashi feared nothing, not defeat, not adjustment, not evolution. That's how he kept winning duels others thought were unwinnable. Not by brute force, by reading the terrain, rewriting his response, and forcing the world to meet him on his terms. Let's stop theorizing. Strategy means nothing if it can't be used in real time, under pressure, in motion, surrounded by chaos. Musashi didn't survive 60 duels because he was stronger. He survived because he knew how to turn the battlefield into a chessboard, and he played pieces no one else could see. The first is the feint, controlled deception. Musashi mastered the art of appearing vulnerable. He would drop his guard, show fatigue, stumble, and when his opponent lunged for what looked like weakness, he would strike through the opening he created. The man who always tries to look strong is already losing, because strength that must be seen is weakness. In modern life, the feint is under-signaling. You don't announce your progress. You don't show every skill. You let them assume. Let them speak first, assume wrong, reveal their hand. The quiet man collects data. The loud man becomes data. When you stop performing, you start positioning. Next, the stillness. In combat, Musashi could stop moving completely while blades flashed around him. His calm was a weapon, a mirror reflecting chaos back at his enemy. Stillness is not inaction, it's timing. The man who pauses intentionally is the one controlling tempo. In a meeting, in a crisis, in an argument, try this. Say nothing first. Watch. Let others drain themselves, explaining, defending, justifying. Stillness buys you time, and time buys you accuracy. Then comes the mirror. Musashi could read rhythm so precisely that he'd mimic his opponent's movements, matching their breathing, their stance, their timing, until they thought he'd fallen into their pattern. And just when they relaxed, believing they had him figured out, he'd break tempo. In modern terms, you mirror people to build trust, and then you break the rhythm to take control. It's social aikido. You use their energy against them. In conversation, mimic tone. In negotiation, mirror pacing. In strategy, mirror timing. And when the moment is right, shift one beat ahead.
That single beat wins the entire rhythm. And then the void. Musashi called it ku, the fifth element, the space of emptiness. The void is unpredictability, the ability to not be defined. You must train yourself to be unreadable, not mysterious for attention, but for survival. People can only control what they can predict. The moment you become a pattern, you become a target. Break your schedule once a week. Change your tone mid-discussion. Act calm when expected to rage. Act indifferent when expected to compete. That uncertainty forces others to play around your silence, your stillness, your rhythm. That's how you win without fighting, by becoming the storm they can't forecast.
Modern equivalents prove this. Founders who pivot mid-market crash, turning failure into domination. Athletes who alter their training routines days before a championship, forcing opponents to guess wrong. Chess players who sacrifice major pieces, not for luck, but for tempo. It's never about intellect, it's about asymmetry. You don't need to be smarter than everyone else. You just need to make sure no one ever fully understands how you think. Musashi never won by thinking harder. He won by thinking sideways. He created confusion on purpose, built systems around silence, and designed his battles so that his opponent's intelligence turned against them. So remember this: the man who wants to win must stop trying to look intelligent. Instead, he must become impossible to read. Unpredictability is the highest form of intelligence because it denies others the comfort of calculation. When they can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. And when they can't prepare, you've already won. They will call you erratic. They will say you change too much, that you can't be figured out. Good. That means the system works. Predictability is a cage built by people who fear losing control. You were born to dismantle control. Musashi once said, "In strategy, what is great is easy to understand." But he didn't mean simple, he meant fluid. The river doesn't plan how to reach the ocean, it just refuses to stop moving. That's how intelligence works, not through rigidity, but relentless adjustment. Let others chase perfection. You chase momentum. Let others argue to be right. You adapt to win. And when the time comes to strike, they'll still be thinking, while you've already moved. Because outsmarting everyone else isn't about knowing more. It's about being untouchable. In thought, in motion, in silence. Be the calm they can't understand. Be the storm they never saw coming. Intelligence without structure decays into noise. Every man starts sharp, few stay sharp. The difference is not intellect, it's systemization. Musashi didn't win 60 duels because he was gifted. He won because he engineered discipline into machinery. His genius was maintenance. Every habit was an operating system. Every action, a program running clean. The first system is attention architecture. A distracted man is already defeated. You cannot calculate if your focus leaks. Intelligence begins with controlled input. Rebuild your environment like a weapon range. Silent, precise, minimal. No clutter, no constant noise. Dedicate specific hours to thought. Protect them like territory. Turn off the feed, the scroll, the gossip. Let silence become your ally. Clarity is not born from effort, it is born from reduction. When you remove everything unnecessary, what remains becomes obvious. The strategist knows that attention is currency. Spend it with intent or lose by default. The second system is the failure loop. Most men run from loss. Musashi dissected it. Every defeat was a data source. He asked, what angle did I miss? What signal did I ignore? What bias ruled me? That's not regret, that's refinement. Modern psychologists call it deliberate reflection, the art of turning error into elevation. Build the ritual. After every project, argument, or deal, perform your 5-minute autopsy. 1 page, 3 questions, 1 correction. No emotion, no justification. Facts only. Over time, this becomes your intelligence amplifier. You stop repeating mistakes because you've taught your mind to extract patterns from pain. The third system is the feedback economy. Never outsource validation. The moment you seek applause, you give up power. Musashi's victories were private. No crowds, no celebration, just mastery. Build your own scoreboards, streaks of execution, observation logs, mental performance trackers. Measure what matters, not attention, but improvement rate. Every day, you refine faster than others realize what changed. The strategist evolves in silence. By the time the world reacts, he's already reinvented himself. The fourth system is redundancy. Smart systems anticipate failure. You build buffers, time, money, health, mental space. So when chaos hits, nothing breaks. A single weak hinge collapses the entire door. Musashi's brilliance was never about force, it was about preparation. He could adapt mid-battle because he planned for error. Do the same. Have backups for routines, contingency for plans, secondary rhythms for burnout seasons. Systems that can only function when perfect are fragile. Systems that bend and reset are invincible. Intelligence, real intelligence, is repetition under structure. You don't think your way into genius. You design it. You architect your focus, formalize your learning, automate your reflection, and codify your evolution. When a man runs on impulse, he burns out. When a man runs on systems, he becomes inevitable. Musashi engineered his life like a perpetual weapon. Mind, body, and environment all aligned to serve strategy. You must do the same. When every detail supports your purpose, nothing can derail you. Not fatigue, not distraction, not failure. Because the intelligent man doesn't think smarter, he lives smarter. But systems don't just maintain order, they reprogram identity. When you live by structure long enough, instinct becomes architecture. Your discipline stops being effort, it becomes reflex. That's when intelligence graduates from habit to nature.
The fifth and final layer of this section is cognitive automation, the point where awareness turns mechanical. Musashi didn't waste thought on decisions that didn't matter. His diet, his sleep, his drills, all predetermined. No emotional debates, no motivation. His cognition was reserved for strategy, not survival. In modern terms, this is decision minimalism. Automate your routines, standardize your workflow, ritualize your mornings. The more trivial decisions you eliminate, the more strategic energy you conserve. The man who must decide every morning whether to train is already late. The disciplined mind doesn't decide, it executes. Every system you build must serve one law: reduce cognitive noise. Noise is the death of intelligence. Every notification, every unfiltered input, every pointless conversation, a small incision into focus. Intelligent men die by 1,000 leaks. You must plug them all. Set hard rules, fixed response hours, silent mornings, minimal stimuli before deep work. Your world must be engineered for precision, not stimulation. Understand this. Intelligence is not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what not to engage. Musashi ignored the irrelevant. He didn't fight every challenger, only those that tested his growth. He didn't debate for vanity, only for clarity. That's how you outlast everyone else, by saying no faster than they say yes. Every no protects bandwidth. Every yes should build the mission. And then comes the invisible benefit: momentum without exhaustion. Systems, when built properly, create a rhythm that sustains itself. You no longer chase energy. Your life produces it. Progress compounds. Reflection accelerates. Clarity multiplies. Your results begin to look effortless, not because you're working less, but because you've removed friction. People call it talent. It's not. It's structure. You begin to think like water, adaptive, unyielding, always moving. When one path closes, you flow into another. That's the highest level of strategic intelligence, fluidity built on unbreakable form. By now, every piece is in motion, attention fortified, failure converted, feedback refined, redundancy secured, cognition automated. You've built the architecture of a strategist, a man whose intelligence is no longer an act, but a system. That's how you outsmart everybody else. Not by reacting faster, but by building slower. Not by working harder, but by thinking deeper. And not by competing, but by designing a life that can't be matched. When others panic, you'll be calm. When others guess, you'll calculate. When others burn out, you'll still be building. Because you've turned intelligence into infrastructure, and infrastructure doesn't lose. Every strategist eventually faces fatigue. The mind that is always on guard begins to crave silence. Constant alertness, unchecked, corrodes peace, and paranoia begins to disguise itself as intelligence. Musashi understood this long before modern psychology gave it language. After years of duels, victories, and walking the fine line between life and death, he retreated, not out of fear, but wisdom. His solitude was not surrender, it was recalibration. In the stillness of the cave, his sword grew quieter and his mind sharper. He learned that silence is a weapon too, sharper than steel, heavier than words. The strategist must learn when to step back from noise, when to recharge before perception becomes paranoia. True clarity is born in isolation. Solitude is the final dojo, the place where awareness purifies itself. But strategy without conscience becomes corrosion. What is intelligence without integrity? The brilliance that manipulates others will eventually consume itself. Musashi's greatness wasn't only in his precision, but in his restraint. He knew power meant nothing if it lacked purpose. Every move, every duel was necessity, never vanity. He sought mastery, not malice. To outthink without outgrowing your humanity, that's the difference between a strategist and a schemer.
And then comes the question that separates the great from the eternal. What remains when you're gone? Legacy. The strategist must think beyond the present battlefield. Musashi built his immortality, not through monuments, but through meaning.
He wrote The Book of Five Rings, a manual for minds yet unborn, proof that the sharpest weapon is a transferable idea. His words became his sword's echo, cutting through centuries. That's what the modern strategist must grasp. Intelligence isn't ownership, it's transmission. The truest master leaves blueprints, not mysteries. Build companies that outlive you. Teach people who might surpass you. Write philosophies that will outlast the trend cycle. Legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about remaining useful when memory fades. And finally, the paradox of mastery. When you reach the highest level of understanding, you lose the hunger to prove it. Musashi stopped dueling, not because he couldn't win, but because he no longer needed to. He realized the final opponent was himself, his pride, his ego, his restlessness. Victory over others is temporary. Victory over self is eternal. So this is where the circle closes. Intelligence isn't an endless chase, it's a rhythm. Awareness, restraint, solitude, transmission. To be the mind that never sleeps, you must also be the soul that knows when to rest. Be the stillness in every storm, the quiet predator in every noise. Outsmart everybody by mastering yourself first.